about building your network and, of course, wearing pants too. Um, it's a timely topic. I'm headed to a conference next week that I'm extremely excited about. And yes, we will wear pants, most likely. Some of them may be yoga pants. I reserve the right to choose later. But what's interesting about that is all of these people that I'm insanely excited to be meeting in person, none of us know what the others look like from, shoulders down. We see each other on Zoom all the time. And we have these amazing connections and friendships and business relationships, but we have never been in the same room as each other. Oh, and you may be noticing this is my new artwork here. That's from my daughter. She brought it in yesterday. And so I want to talk a little bit about that connection today. Generally speaking, I do wear pants, but how will meeting in person transform some of these connections that we've got? But also, how do you form these connections in the first place? About a month ago, I appeared on the Copywriter Club podcast hosted by Rob Marsh and Kira Hug. And I've had lots of people approach me since being on that show. What's particularly interesting is one of the things that really seems to be resonating across the board is, my glasses are filthy. I thought they were so clean, and now I can see the reflection in the glass. So what's really interesting is my business is built entirely on relationships, entirely on that network. And I think right now, a lot of us are feeling unsure about life in general, and a lot of things that, even as much as a month ago, we would be able to withstand personally or professionally. A lot of us are dealing with some really heavy things. And I'm talking about Ukraine. I'm talking about life in general. And it's okay. It's okay to be really stressed out right now. I know I am. Being out last week was completely unplanned. For those of you that don't know, I was in the hospital with my daughter, and she nothing, I was obviously serious enough that she was admitted, but she was admitted out of a precaution because she was so sick for 3 or 4 days that she needed lots of fluids and blood sugar. And my network stood up for me. And so when people reach out to me after hearing that podcast, they're talking about like, well, how is this network? How have you built this amazing group of friends? And it takes work. It takes so much work to do. So what does that look like? Just like any friendship, it requires work. It requires time. It requires an investment of energy to build. And how do you build that relationship? How do you build a relationship-driven business if you need to pay bills first, and if you also need some of that emotional investment back? You can only put so much out into the world. So how do you balance this need? So I'd like to talk about that today, because it's not something that a lot of people do talk about, or at least a lot of people in my circle don't talk about it as much. So I want to go back in time. Let's hop in our time machine, put on our time machine captaining hat. I may be going too deep into the metaphor here. To roughly 3 years ago, I was relatively new to being in business. I had no idea what I was doing, and I just started having conversations with people. However, the people that I set out to have conversations from were all prospective clients. So I really saw them as not necessarily sales calls, but I had an end game in mind, right? And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. After all, we're all in this because we want to put a roof over our head. We want to pay the bills. We want to leave an impact and a legacy. I want women to know that it is possible to take a different role than these things that society has said that we have to fit into. Whether that means personally, professionally, you can forge your own path, and it's possible. So that's one of the legacies I want to leave. And not just women, but women are who I feel the most called to, because I feel like we often get pigeonholed into whatever these roles are. So what can this look like? What realistically can these connections look like? And how do you make them without burning out? So first, sales calls are completely okay. Let's get that out of the way. It is completely okay to go into a conversation with this end goal in mind, like, hey, I'm hoping that they will buy from me, because we all do that. We still have those sales calls, but that's not network building calls, and that's different. So, what I want to challenge everyone listening and watching on the replay, what I want to challenge you to do is to have more conversations with no end game. I want you to let go of your expectations around a call and truly hope to get to know the real person behind the screen, like the real person. And someone said on LinkedIn, it was Rita Ernst, if you know her, she said, Zoom saves me from lots of golf games. And I kind of repurposed that into my Twitter yesterday, and I was talking about, Zoom is the new golf. And a different friend, Nicole Morton, who you all know because she's been on the show a couple of times, Nicole said, thank God my golf game is terrible. And I'm like, yep, over here I drive a mean beer cart, but I've never played golf. And that's really the purpose of golf, though, is to build those friendships and relationships first, to build those connections, to forge that path, right? So I want you to think of this as a social hour, coffee with a friend, maybe. Maybe it's a coffee date with someone new. Maybe there's some other opportunities for you to think about this. But instead of thinking about this person as a prospect, think about them as a potential conversation partner. Think of them as someone who you can maybe learn from, you can maybe solve a problem for, but ultimately, your goal is not to sell to them. If business comes of it, great. But if not, I want you to look at this person as someone that could be a referral partner. Maybe not for you. Maybe you're a referral partner to them. Find out what would make a good referral to them. Maybe you're in the same space. Maybe it's overflow for one another. And then again, maybe not, right? Maybe you are needing to be in a space where, maybe you're a copywriter. Let's go with that. Maybe you're connecting with designers because you want to learn how they work with copywriters. How can you improve your packages to, to make them more effective for working with designers? How can you improve the handoff to make that more effective? Does this make sense? So your main goal, and I just realized something changed about this interface, and I can't see comments anymore. I can't see who is viewing, who is not. So I'm rolling with it. Oh, weird. It got like way extended over to the right. So, oh, it's me. I zoomed in. Good morning. Yes, I have coffee in here. By the way, speaking of having a network, a dear friend of mine who I met online, of course, that's what we're talking about here. When I was in the hospital, she made sure that I had some Starbucks cards headed my way, so they appeared in my email inbox. And so I got this lovely bronzy Starbucks mug to enjoy. To enjoy a warm or cold beverage with. It's super heavy duty, like it's got some heft to it. I wouldn't want to chuck it at anyone because I think it would hurt. Not that I'm in the habit of chucking coffee at people. Let's just get that clear. So going back to this, I think the biggest misconception is my network has, yes, 100%. It has been the key to my success. Any success that I've found, any success that I will find in the future is the people I've worked with. And going back in time, I didn't know the value of talking with people who weren't my prospect right away, who were either in a similar industry to mine or one adjacent to mine, until I did an accelerator program. And part of that was building the community and getting to know people. And that was where it started. So how can you set aside some time to do this? First, hold up to 2 coffee conversations a week. I actually have a scheduler put into my Dubsado that can only be booked up to 2 times a week, I think. Or maybe I can do 4 a week, 2 times a day, and I have 2 days a week that I'll schedule them. And I'll schedule them offline too. I'll use other people's schedulers. But what's really, really great about booking them this way is that people can hop onto my calendar. I am not going to get 14 in a day, right? I'm not going to be so overwhelmed at the end of the day, but it keeps this build at a sustainable pace, something that I can use on a long term. So that was a really interesting conversation when I realized people weren't sure about that. So I have them set up. They're 20 to 30 minutes long usually. They come with a set of like a confirmation and a set of reminders at 24 hours and 60 minutes. And it's really a fun way to get to know people. And there's no agenda when we go down. It's like, hey, who are you? What do you do? What are you up to? Oh, by the way, my cat's jumping out the window outside. I need to do this just a second. And there's no expectation. It is just about getting to know the real human behind it. So that was fun. And I started making a habit out of doing this. And what I find is that when I'm not making time to have these conversations, sometimes they're with people I know well, sometimes they're with people I've never met before, right? So you want to make sure that you're fostering these relationships. And usually within a few days of having a call with someone, something happens. Like maybe we solve a problem on that call, but maybe it's like, oh, I found this great opportunity that looks really interesting to you. Let me forward it your way, or let me make an introduction. Because you never know like what's going to happen, right? You never know how that's going to turn around into something interesting for you. So what I would challenge you to do is just to go out and let go of the expectations. And so where do you find these people? Find them where you hang out. Are you on business Facebook? Are you on business TikTok? Are you on Twitter? Are you on LinkedIn? Any of those 4 places would probably be great. It's an opportunity. You can see what other people's content is. You can start interacting with it, comment. And then if you're feeling like this is really someone that you want to learn more about, or there's something that you said that you want to learn more about the perspective, take it to DM and be like, hey, I'd really love to learn more about that. Maybe ask a couple of questions. And from there, maybe it makes sense to hop on a coffee call. You don't want to be creepy, which I think there's a lot of room for that in TikTok in particular. You really want to come to it from a place of helping. And I think that's it. You have to go into it authentically wanting to connect, possibly to help, possibly to solve a problem, and see what happens. And you follow up with them. Hey, it was great talking with you. I had these ideas. Or, maybe it comes out of it that you can help them. Maybe there's something you can do to actually connect with them, right? So what does that look like? What does that mean for you? And maybe it means you hop on a second call later to talk about this, unless they are like, hey, how fast can you help me? Let's do this. That first call should really be all about the conversation, not the coffee. Get to know them first. Get to know something interesting about them before you even go down a path of seeing what makes them tick, seeing how you can help them, trying to sell, right? Because these coffee conversations are not about sales. I don't know how many times I can say that. So that's where you go find people, right? That's where you go find. The same way, it's the equivalent of, for women, right, of being at a bar bathroom in your 20s and being like, oh my gosh, I love your earrings or your shirt or whatever. And you walk out of there best friends. It's the equivalent of that. Or it's the equivalent of being like, oh, hey, friend in line in front of me, I see your tags poking out. May I? And amazing friendships can be formed at the coffee shop, just completely, I don't want to say randomly, but completely randomly. Or maybe, so in an online world that shifts, obviously you're not going to tuck in someone's tag. You're not going to be like, oh, you got a on your tooth. Instead, it's going to be more based on the ideas. Hey, I really liked what you had to say about this. I'd love to know more about how you got there. How can we generate this conversation? And a lot of times what's funny is if people have heard me speak on building a network, they'll come to me and they'll be like, I'm really curious how you do that. That is exactly how you do it. You just did it by reaching out and asking questions. And sometimes people are going to be willing to do it. Sometimes they can't. But just because they don't hop on a call doesn't mean that you can't follow up later if you really want to get to know them, continue to interact. Or similarly, if you're like, well, they said no. All right, move on. You're not going to say yes to everyone who is like, where did you get the shirt? You're like, top secret. Right? So it's just the way it is. It does not mean that you have failed. So those are my key takeaways here. I think the other thing that you have to do, we talked a little bit about this, it's not about sales. If you're still thinking about this person as a prospect, you're doing it wrong. So I want you to let go, not just of the outcome of a sale, but I want you to let go of the outcome of anything, of this person as a prospective anything. They are your conversation partner. That's it. And I think when you let go of expectations, when you let go of how this is going to fit inside the little box of, this is how it works, that's when some really interesting things start to happen. That's when you build those relationships. That's when you build that network. That's when you come across as truly authentic, when you let go of all of your preconceptions around this. So I hope that this is really helpful to everyone. This is something that I feel extremely strongly about, that building a network is not about the sales. It is about the interactions and getting to know the people. From there, all things come, right? So do let me know if you have questions on this. Ping, comment, whatever. If you want to know about the pants that I will be wearing next weekend at the Copywriter Club IRL conference, I'm still buying them. So Amazon says to be determined. We'll see how I like them, how they fit. Anyway, I truly hope that you have an amazing Tuesday. It is really good to be back in these four walls, as excited as I am to go be in different sets of four walls. I don't want to be doing it from the hospital again. So wishing you